Hey, welcome to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm excited that you guys would join us today for another great episode. And to all those listening for the first time, hey, thank you for joining us. I want you to know that your story and what you may be going through right now matter here, and you're not alone. So don't worry about what chapter you're in because God's still writing your story. So hey, sit back with a community that cares about you and hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in men's real stories. So my special guest today, he's a born creator for all my creators out there. He successfully started many ministries, but that all came on the backside of the death of his own dream. So I'm excited to speak to him today about his book, The Death of a Dream, as well as how he could also provide insight on how to breathe life back into God's purpose for us when things don't go as we plan. So I want to welcome my brother, Daron Earlewine, to the episode.
Hey, what's up,
How you doing today, brother?
Hey, blessed to be on the show with you, man.
Yeah. It's a blessing. It's always awesome when things work together and I'm able to talk to guests, even if it's through the screen, that can truly provide like some insight or just kind of like provide a conversation or a story that can truly connect and resonate not only with me, which are always awesome, but also with the guests that listen and are just like really wanting to know, what another brother can provide to just their life as they're going through situations. And after reading your book, I was thinking, wow, okay, so how many times can we say that, like, I had so much planned, like I had it written out perfectly, like it looks so good.
Yep.
And then the day comes and you're just like, wait, what just happened? There's no way you're telling me that's not the plan anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know what? Let's start with you introducing yourself to all my guests, all the listeners and everybody who may be listening today.
Absolutely, Robert. Yeah. Daron Earlewine. Every like 3 or 4 years, I have to redo my intro because I like to start something new or do something different. So I used to, say I'm a pastor or, pastor and a drummer and whatever else. And so now I'm trying to get used to saying, that I'm an author, speaker, podcaster, entrepreneur, but just, kind of cut from the cloth of more of an apostle kind of pioneer, in the faith. And that was a very monumental moment for me when I began to discover like that God has actually created us with different callings and giftings, and was a watershed moment for me to kind of understand that I had permission from the Lord to be the person that He, created me to be. And so part of that is just kind of every 3 or 4 years there's a new iteration or something new happening. But been doing ministry, kind of all my life, but professionally, if you will, in pastoral roles and whatever else like that for the past 23 years. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, and got 3 kids, 3 boys. They're all teenagers, 19, 17, 13. My wife and I have been married for 22 years. No, 23 this year. And yeah, I just, I love the journey that God's taken me on. One of the things I say in the book is, I don't know if I should laugh or I should cry when I look at my life and think that there was a time in my life where I really did struggle to trust that God had my best interests, at heart, especially when I was, a teenager. I really, struggled to submit to God's call for my life. And then, there's been plenty of moments where things have happened where I've been like, are you sure about this, God? You still see me? You still got this? But,
right.
But man, He's just showed Himself faithful so many times, time and time again, that when I look back on it, I say this to my sons all the time, that the greatest thing you could ever do, is trust God with your best and with your journey, with the plan that He has for you, even when it doesn't look great or there's tough days or major setbacks or major disappointments. He's got you in that. So that's just a quick little intro of me.
Yeah, no, that was good. You covered so much, and you even set me up for my next question because I was sitting there thinking as you were sharing that, I'm like, wow. And I read that earlier that you had 3 boys, but as you were sharing like how you felt as a teenager, as you were growing up, I kept thinking to myself, how does that look now when you're looking at it from a different lens through your son's lives? Because I'm kind of seeing that in my own life now with a 15-year-old.
Yeah. I think one of the phrases that I've stolen from somebody else is this idea of having a deficit of imagination. And as a kid, I mean, I 100% had that. I grew up in, I'm a pastor's kid, grew up as a pastor's kid in the church. And, you know, my dad's churches were always very small churches. I mean, 50, 75 people. And so for me, I had this aspiration early on in life. I had gifting to play the drums, and I wanted to be, you know, a rock star and travel around the world and play drums and do all that. And for me, you know, I saw my dad's life as a, you know, pastor of a church, and church wasn't full of a lot of creative people, a lot of innovative people, a lot of people really going for it in life. And so I got to this place of feeling like, man, if I trust God with my future, with my life, he's going to make me do something that I would hate. And not that it would not, and I don't say like to do what my dad did would be something that I would hate, but it just seems like I don't think I want to be a local church, you know, pastor. And so, you know, growing up in the church, you have, you know, you kind of have pastors that, you know, are top of the food chain, and then like missionaries, right? They're like all stars, you know. And so
Right.
if you're going to really ascend to what God really wants, eventually you're going to be a missionary. And the missionaries that always visited our church, right? They were always in some, you know, far off village, you know, somewhere with, you know, dangerous snakes killing people and eating kids in their village, you know, and and I'm not trying to be mean to the missionaries that we met, but they were very socially awkward people, you know. I didn't meet them and go, man, if I really keep following Jesus, I really want to become you. I would think, if I'm going to follow Jesus, like, am I going to become you? Like, this is how it's going to end for me. You know,
Right.
I'm going to be awkward. I'm going to live in some village somewhere, nowhere. And I'll probably be getting, you know, eaten by an anaconda is, you know, how I'll meet Jesus. And so the idea was like, here's everything I'm dreaming about and things I think I have gifts to do. But
Right.
God's probably mad at me for the last time that I sinned. He's probably not into actually leading me to freedom and joy in my life. He probably has something that, you know, I'm going to have to become a martyr. And he's really and it just, you know, it was a deficit of imagination, but it was also just to misunderstand the character of God and
That's
seeing him
good.
as, you know, seeing him as angry, maybe seeing him as vindictive, seeing him as disappointed in me all the time. And just like, man, if I could really do enough and be good enough, you know, I might be able to lucky, you know, kind of luck my way into something great. And, you know, it's just a very immature understanding of grace and of God's goodness. And so, you know, that took me a while to wrestle, you know, out of my mind and out of my spirit. And so it's something with my boys that, you know, I do all I can, you know, to share the real time stories of how God's breaking through and God's doing amazing things and who he is and what his character is and what his faithfulness has been. And the reason he's created them on purpose and for a purpose is important that I'm, you know, reiterating constantly to him. I just had a conversation with my 13-year-old actually this weekend, and I was able to speak this week at my local church, and, you know, things went great and God did some cool things. And my son was very, you know, affirming and very sweet. He was like, man, Dad, he's like, you're so good. You know, when you talk, he's like, you know, it always, you know, changes people, and you're just really great. You know, you do a great job, Dad. And I thanked him. I said, hey, bud, you know, thank you so much for the encouragement. I said, but here's what I want you to know, buddy, as I was like, God has gifted me with one of my gifts, one of my strengths is communication. And I was like, from understanding, and I do a lot of work helping people find purpose in their life. And one of the assessments we use is the Clifton Strength Finders. And I said, here's the deal. I was like, from the moment God was forming my brain, you know, he's created abilities and these synaptic connections between both hemispheres of my brains, where my brain, I only have one of them, two hemispheres. But like, I was naturally given a gift from God that my brain works to know how to communicate. And I was like, and I've spent, you know, 2 decades or more honing that and learning skills and gaining knowledge and practicing. And I said, so when I speak, I'm using one of God's gifts, but I was like, but without God's Spirit showing up and blessing that, I was like, it's just my words. And I said, listen, buddy, I was like, you may have a gift of communication. We're learning who God's created you to be, but I was like, you may not. It could be something else, but you're going to have natural giftings that God has literally knit together, right? We know that from the word. And when you take your best and you trust it to what God wants to do and trust that to his Spirit, I was like, it may not be communicating, but it's going to be something that you're going to be able to do exceptional. and do exceptional for his glory and, and for other people's good. And
So
so
good.
those are the things these things I've learned through, wrestling with God. I try at every opportunity I can to just help that be a part of the narrative that they're hearing about who God is and how he's created them, so they can skip that, probably decade that I was wrestling with God.
Trying to figure it out. Yeah, no,
Hmm.
that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the beauty of fatherhood, to allow your kids to not only see a a version of a Christian from a perspective of you that
Hmm.
looks cool, that they look up to, because like you said, you were looking at missionaries and stuff, and we're like, okay, is God just creating weirdos? Do I have to become a weirdo in order to like be in a mission or be a pastor? And so
Yeah.
a lot of times it's a cool perspective or cool picture to see your father, even, or maybe it may be a youth minister at the church, give you a perspective of like, no, see, understand, I can still be me, I can still be cool and still be used by God and
Yeah.
still recognize that the gifts he gave me
Mm.
are just that. I love how you said it, a gift that need that without him backing it, without him blessing it,
Yeah.
it's only in your strength.
Yes.
So it only
Yes.
goes so far. So
Hmm.
I love how you put that. And I'm going to take a note from one of your pages, because I was, every once in a while, I like to kind of like read what people have done. And because you have so much out there that I read beforehand,
Hmm.
there were certain things that just kind of like really hit me. And I love how you a lot of times you talk about purpose.
Hmm.
Purpose is one of your big things. And so as I was looking at something, I read that you said before people can change the world, they need to know their worth.
Hmm.
And that was just one part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of times when you hear that, you think like, okay, well, like, who's supposed to show me my worth, and where does my worth come from? And how do I know what my worth is? Because right now, based on the things I've done and the places I've been and the stuff I've been through, I kind of feel worthless right now.
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
And so they're looking for somebody to add value to them, to tell them they're valuable. And in a lot of cases, we look for that validation or that worth or that price point from a spouse,
Hmm.
from a companion. And if they start to like, if her value starts off really high and then things start to like level off, and maybe it might dip every once in a while, we start to feel like our value is really based on, or our worth is based on what we're bringing to the
Hmm.
situation, whether
Yeah.
that be a woman or man. What am I doing to keep my value up there, my worth up there? In conversations you've had with people, how do you normally address that from a perspective that will allow them to realize where their worth comes from, so that
Mm.
it's not like the stock market?
Yeah. 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 Great question, Robert. And I think that's all of us, and I think it's something that honestly is never it never stops. It's constantly, um, there's things constantly coming at us. We're walking through life. I just read a quote the other day. I'm reading a book called The Discipline of Disturbance by a guy named, I think his name is Hud McWilliams or something like that. And he said that, and I think he stole this from somebody else, or maybe he said it, doesn't matter. But he said, living things are never finished. And I was listening to the audiobook and I stopped and I rewound. I was like, I got to hear that again. I stopped and wrote it down. And, we love to complete things. We love to get done to a day, and, how much did I get off my to-do list? And this thought we have that I'm working towards a place where I'll be finished, I'll be cured, I'll get to that place. But then realizing, like, no, living things are never finished until they're dead. And
Yeah.
so as long as I'm alive, I'm never going to be finished. I'm always going to be evolving. I'm always going to be changing. And if I'm in a great season, let's say I'm getting a lot of wins, whether it's, professionally, whether it's personally, if those things are externally the things that are giving me worth and value, well, then now I'm held captive to whatever's happening outside of me. And so for me, what I try to bring people back to is like, if you could imagine like a triangle, right? And at the top of the triangle, I like to write the word source. And that source can be whatever you choose it to be. that choice, though, could ruin your life. And that if you look at the triangle, kind of see it in your mind, if you look at it and you see source and you come down to the right of it, right, that next corner, I always write the word identity. And whatever is your source is going to do its best to determine your identity. So some people, their source is money, their source is others, their source is accomplishment, their source could be failures. They could find their identity in what they've failed at and where they've fallen. They could put their source in trauma. Whatever you put at the top of that triangle will define you. Well, my belief is, as human beings, right, the only thing that gets a chance to define me, the only thing that gets a chance to name me, to give me my value, my worth, is that which created me. We're both fathers, and like when I named my kids, right, I didn't put that on Facebook and say, hey, anybody want to name my kids? Right, like my wife and I, right, we created them. We get to name them. Right. We get to give them that value of the names that we've given them. And the same is true with our relationship with Christ. So for me, coming up and saying, I've got to get to the place where my source is God. He is my source because he created me on purpose and for a purpose. And so the only thing that gets to determine my identity is not what I do, whether it's good or bad. It's what he has done, and it's what he says about me. So, down that side of the triangle, we're looking at the grace of God. We're looking at the sacrifice of Jesus, and we're looking at what God has already said is true about me. And as long as that is the flow of source to identity for me, well, then accomplishment, obedience, everything else flows to the other side of the triangle. Is then it flows after identity, which flows from the source. And the danger for all of us, I think, is when we start running that triangle the opposite way. We begin to look at our performance. We begin to look at our obedience first. We begin to look at our accomplishments first. And then we allow those to be what determines our identity. So, I'm winning in life, therefore I'm a winner. I'm losing in life, therefore I'm a loser. I'm sinning in life, therefore I'm a sinner. No, like the word of God says that I'm a saint. God says that I'm seated in the heavenlies with Christ. God says that I'm the salt and light of the earth. God says that I'm the righteousness of Christ. God says that I'm an ambassador of Jesus Christ. God says that I'm an overcomer. Like, these are things that God says, not based on my resume, not based on the report card from last week, but based on who I am in him and him being my source. So then the performance then becomes, an afterthought. It's not something that has the power to define. And so I think if someone is in the process of continually battling with worth, and that can be, I think, people that they're saying, I'm less than because of what I've done. And I think of some people, they become their own source. So that's when you get into, you're dealing with somebody that lacks a lot of humility because they're doing everything they can to prove to the world and to themselves that they do have value. But I think when you can let the validation and the definition of value come from the source, from God, well, then you lose the feeling that I have something to prove. I don't have someone to please. I don't have something to protect in my life because that's all been taken care of. And I think it leads us to a great place of freedom. And if you really dig into that and say, wait a second, the God who created and sustains the whole universe, he actually sees value and purpose and like gave his life for me. So if that's the way he has already seen me before I've done anything, and none of that's predicated on anything I've done, well, then I'm in a place of security no matter what comes at me through life, And I draw that triangle and bring people back to that often when I'm coaching or mentoring someone or teaching or whatever it could be, and I have to bring myself back to it from time to time as well.
Right. No, that's so good. I love that triangle diagram because you're right. The way you just put it in my head of like, you can go this way of understanding what your identity is. And then out of your identity comes a byproduct of what God sees in you or what God's gifts are for you. But then I love how I'm looking at it right now. And you're right. A lot of times what we do or what we don't do speaks to who we are. And I lived out of that for so long, not even realizing that my worth was already in me. I wasn't trying to obtain the worth. Because I think that's where we get stuck sometimes of like, I'm not worthy until I show everybody I'm worthy. So it's going to take work on me now to get that worth or put that worth in me. It's already in you though. And I love how you frame that. Yeah, it's so good. So in understanding that worth now, you take it from when you understand your worth, then you will discover your purpose. And I think that we are in I really believe that we are in a season right now where everybody it almost seems like purpose is almost like this just tag word where everybody's like, okay, well, what is your purpose? What is your purpose? And a lot of people are looking at purpose from the wrong lens. Maybe they've looked at it from like, maybe what do you bring to the table? Why are you here at this table, instead of trying to understand what is the bigger picture? And so how do you normally, because I love how you just put the whole triangle diagram. How do you normally break down in understanding, or when you know your worth, finding the purpose that God has for you? Because you earlier explained about gifts and how sometimes we can recognize there's gifts there. I knew that I had a gift long time ago. But I also saw that gift from my own lens of what I could do with it. Yeah. And so it's like anything, when you see a gift, you're like, okay, well, I can use this for my own gains, or I can use this for my own pleasure. And you can corrupt what God has put in you for his good or for your good and his glory. Yeah. But when you realize that there is a gift there, I think the next stop is like, okay, well then, God, what is your plan and purpose for me with this gift? Yeah.
Well, right now, Robert, God's taking me to school on my word for the year. I always choose a word, or ask God to give me a word for each year, you know. And this year he gave me the word relationships, and I immediately asked him for a refund.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that, because I gotta know why, because you seem like a relational guy.
Yeah, well, it was just, I was like, you get words for the year, you're like, abundance, or courage, or something that sounds sexy and exciting.
Right, right.
And I was like, relationships, like, that's it, right? That's going to be. And he's educating me in such a powerful way right now, because what he's showing me is, and I just did a 3-day training with kind of a brand new mentor of mine, a guy named Dave Gibbons. And Dave's a pastor out in California, does a lot of coaching and mentoring around the country, around the world, honestly. And, back in December, he just kind of changed my whole paradigm of how I'm seeing purpose. And, it kind of goes down like this, is realizing that as a human being, right, I was created for relationships by a relationship. Like, we don't think about that often. The Father, Son, the Holy Spirit they are a relationship. So when God says, I'm creating you in my image, well, part of that is relationship. And so looking at our life and really purpose from a grand scheme, and I think we've got to start there, because we like to go down granular. And I think a lot of times when we talk about purpose, people get confused and they start talking about occupation. Right? Like, what's my purpose as far as what am I going to do? And what started to give me a lot of freedom recently is, Dave said it like this, like, how many occupations, Robert, would you say Jesus had? Like, think about his life. How many jobs could you say that he did?
He was a carpenter.
There we go.
He was a teacher.
He was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He was a winemaker.
Yep.
Right.
That's good. Yeah.
Like, you go through all these things.
I was about to say, that's a good question, though. I'm going to write that down for later.
Right. He had a ton of occupations. But did any of those occupations define his purpose?
Right.
Right. And
no, you're right.
his purpose was relationships. His greatest purpose was restoring the relationship that humanity had with God, the Savior of the world.
Yeah.
But like,
that was his. Okay. So hold on. I'm just curious. I'm sorry to stop you.
No.
So what and I'm just going to repeat that real quick. He had many occupations. He had many jobs, but his purpose was to restore relationship with our Father, with his Father.
Yes.
That's good. That's good.
It's
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to.
no, I love it. Stop whenever you need to, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and what I'm trying to learn to help people to grow into is to go, listen, your purpose is relationships. Your purpose is to love the Lord your God, your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? That's your vertical. And then love your neighbor as yourself. And so when you can seek that as the primal essence of what it means to be human, then the occupation doesn't matter, right?
Right.
People look at, like maybe you or me, like, oh, you guys do podcasts, you do ministry, you're pastor, you do ministry stuff. You really do God's work. I'm just an accountant. It's like, well, no, like you have an occupation that's an accountant or a barista, or you're a doctor, or you're a teacher. But the essence of what you do is to love people the way that you've been loved. That's your
Right.
purpose. That's the essence of who you are. Whatever uniform you put on that day, right, is secondary. And so, Dallas Willard said something like, your calling doesn't always become your career, but your calling can always fit within any career you have.
Sure.
Because your calling is relationships. And so I think that begins to give all of us access to understand I can fulfill God's purpose for my life no matter what my job is, no matter what, I'm using in that way. Now, I think the amazing thing about God is not that he saved us, not that he just gave us our identity, all of those things we've already talked about, but he's so good. He literally custom makes you to be exceptional at doing certain things. And we could call those occupations, right? And we find joy from those. We bring things into the world. We create culture. We create opportunity. We create things because we're creative like he is. And so it's not just like a boring relationship thing, but that's the most fulfilling thing we could ever put our heart and mind and soul and strength into. But he's so good that he actually does, create you, custom make you where you're going to be exceptionally gifted to do certain things. There is work to be done. But I think for me, I'm starting to balance those where I was so caught up so much in finding my purpose. And even as I'm working with people, I'm realizing our conversation is going to people's jobs way too often. Like I want you to discover God's gifts and his ability to who he's created you to be so you can find the most fulfilling job. No.
Right.
Like that's an and. Like you can get there and that would be great,
Right.
But if you start seeking my purpose is relationships. And I have this career that I'm really good at because God, stacked the deck in my favor. So I think we have to get those in the right order, or else we're going to feel like we're going to lose a job and feel like we have no purpose.
Okay, man. Okay, you just opened up a whole room full of just like so much there and just what you just said. Okay, so like I'm going to back out of that room just a little bit because there was something that caught me before you even said that. And I recognize, and this just hit my mind, so maybe this is like fresh revelation. I recognize that a lot of time, even in certain people's professions that they consider their purpose, they feel this sense of burnout. They feel like this sense of I'm getting bored of what I'm doing. And I've sometimes questioned whether is it that you're burnt out, or is it that you're working in that profession or that career and you're not carrying out your purpose in the midst of that career? Because I recognize, as much as I'm an extrovert, when I come home, I like to digress. I like to take a break. I like to sit in silence sometimes, but I still love being in the relationship of people. But I recognize that makes my career so much better. Sure. Do I love what I do every day, all the time? There's some days where, I'd rather just stay in bed.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that I'll miss out on the opportunities of the relationships that I will build in that day, the people that will be able to see God through me. And I recognize that sometimes when I'm not showing up as a reflection of him, they're missing out on an opportunity to be able to experience him through me. And that's in relationship. Yeah. And our relationship should very well mimic or reflect the relationship or honestly, just exactly what he did while he was here. It looks no different, grace and all. It's like you're supposed to show up in that way in your career, because your career is just what I gave you, the desire to want to do. But the part of like, you're supposed to speak to people. You're supposed to be in relationship where you're supposed to build relationships with the people you do like. That's easy. But the people you also don't like.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. That's the part where people start to feel like, well, that made me an introvert and I don't do relationships now because of that.
Yeah.
And it just, I said so much, but to move into the space of you just saying that our professions becoming our identities. And then when we lose that profession, it's almost like once again, the death of another dream, a dream of becoming the vice president here. And I had just made it to the director status and they let me go. And it's like, but my dream was. And so where do I go now? Because I think that's where a lot of us, no matter what your profession is, I see it a lot in sports. I see a lot where people have a retirement, an early retirement in what their profession was. They don't know who they are anymore after that season is done. And they're trying to rebound. So, and I don't want you to ruin it for anybody who needs to pick up this book and read it and really get the good, because he gives you all the details. This is not just like and my dream ended, and no. I'm talking about granular. Like I felt it as I read this. Like, we gotta jump him. He's gotta go. Like there was so much there, but like, speak to those who feel like their dream died long time ago. Or they may wake up to a dead dream tomorrow.
Yeah, dreams are so delicate and dangerous, I'll say, because most often, if we allow ourselves the space to dream, no matter how hard we try, our identity gets wrapped up in the lining of them, always. And so, if everything we've said so far on the podcast, if that's all out of alignment, right, then it's even more difficult, because I've tried what I could, but I'm still wrapped up in this. And it's easy to, because life is hard, and you get something that you love to do, something that you may be getting celebrated for, and then it's gone. And if you don't have a strong, relationship, structure around you, all these things, it can feel like there's really like nothing left to live. And I think the biggest, one of the biggest pieces of that is when you have a death of a dream. I talk about it a little bit in the book, is to be compassionate to yourself and realize that dream has maybe been with you for a long time. And God's not mad at you that it hurts or that you're sad. I love the story of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Like when Jesus sees them all crying, he knows he's getting ready to do a miracle, but he doesn't rebuke them for their sorrow. Like he cries with them, right? He weeps. And so when we go through that, know that, God weeps. Jesus is weeping with you when your heart's broken about something. But the part that we have to eventually allow ourselves to get to it and allow him to lead us to is we have to let it die. I joke around, you think about that story of, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Like, imagine if they had been like if Jesus showed up there 2 days later and like he's been dead for 4 days or whatever, and that Lazarus isn't in the grave, right? They got him sitting in the kitchen table, he's all stiff, you know what I mean? And they're like, we're not going to do it. We're not letting him die. Jesus is going to do a miracle. We can't figure it out, but we're not going to accept it. We're going to just, and they, carrying him around like, hey, he's still here. We're not going to let him die. Like it would have been unsightly. It'd have been awkward.
Right.
It'd have been, it would have but I make a point in the book that, man, for about a decade when my dream died, I did that. I found every way I could to prop it up, to try to bring it back to life. And it caused a lot of pain in my life and other people's lives. So as difficult as it is, we have to come to the place where we celebrate what it was. We mourn the loss, right? And that's natural. But then we let it die because, without death, there cannot be resurrection. And so if we're looking for God to resurrect a new purpose in us, and all we're doing is propping up something that's already dead, like he can't work with that. And so we've got to come to the place where we let that die. And I think another part, is to remember that dreams and purpose are two completely different things. This dream I have, it is, I wasn't guaranteed what timeline it had. Like God gave me a dream, like say I want to be in the NFL, and I did it for 3 years, maybe. Well, did he guarantee me I was going to be in the NFL for the rest of my life? Right? That's not possible. Your average NFL career might be 3 years. So you're like, every dream we have has an unknown lifetime in it. It could be 6 months, it could be 6 years, it could be 6 years. I don't know. But I guarantee you at some point, the life of that dream is going to be lived out. It's going to expire and it's going to die. Purpose, like we've already talked about, right? It's never ending. It doesn't stop. In fact, it's eternal. Like we're going to be like Robert, now that we're friends, bro, we're going to be friends. We're going to be in a relationship for eternity. Like there will never be a time that we are not existing and have the opportunity to have this relationship.
Sure.
This podcast or whatever we're involved in, me writing books, you writing books, I don't know how long that's going to last. Eventually that's going to stop. And so I think we have to be prepared for that understanding when it happens. No, there was a lifetime here. I'm going to celebrate what it was. I'm going to mourn that it's gone, but I'm going to let it die because I'm trusting that God is in the business of resurrecting things, and He's got a deeper purpose than what that is, And that's why I love the story of Joseph that I weave together throughout the pages of the book. Because man, you look at his story, it's like dead dream after dead dream after dead dream. But we see him progress through that in a way where, one of the points I make, and I'll bring it up now, is I think oftentimes God uses the death of those dream moments to take us from a micro-sized vision into more of a macro-sized vision of what He's doing.
And I was going to bridge off into that too, because there's going to be a lot of people who are sitting here like, yeah, but like, how do I know my dream wasn't a vision from God? And like you're telling me that I shouldn't necessarily follow my dream. But like, because, I know how people like to always break things down and, it might've been, and I think in all of that, the most important thing you said though, that I think we just kind of like, we skip over it like a skipping log of like, you've got to mourn, or as I use the word, grieve. You've got to grieve that dream, because you can carry a bunch of dead dreams from childhood all the way into adulthood that continuously live in you. They live in your actions. They live in the way you approach people. Because your dreams have died, when's your dream going to die? Like, don't worry, all dreams die anyway. One of these days, yours is going to die. And so it comes out of you because you've never mourned or grieved the dream that you had there. And so God's wanting to take you into a new season, but you're still holding on to, as you were talking about Mary and Martha, you're still walking around literally with a dead body, waiting on God to revive something that He's like, I've already left that. Yeah. I never was even in that. Right. It's time to move forward.
Yeah. And please don't hear me talking down to that or skipping over that.
No. Yeah, right? I just wanted to put some more emphasis on it. Yeah.
I'm glad you did, because that's not easy. It's one of the most difficult things I think we have to do. And those moments of grief and more like those are really hard. I'm not saying it in a flippant way. Hey, get over it. Just mourn it and move on. Like,
right.
It's really, really, really hard. But you're never alone in it, right? It wasn't like God got you and he was really there when it was popping. But now that it's dead, right? He got busy somewhere over, south of Mars, and just I forgot to check in on what Robert was doing. Sorry, bro. Like, hey, get over it. I'm doing something new. That's not God's attitude. But I think about the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. He did have a vision from God, and it was right.
Right.
That's one of the tough things, right? Like, as a kid, teenager, he sees his brothers bowing down to him. I'm going to be a powerful leader. Yes, you are. Absolutely, Joseph. I have given you a vision and a dream that is going to come true. And he saw it all happening the way he thought it was going to happen, which is what we do because we only have our brains to figure it out. Right? And one of my best friends says all the time, if God were to give you all the steps of the journey he's going to take you on, you'd screw it up so bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
There would
be no faith needed, nothing.
No.
I know exactly how this is going to play out. I'm going to lay down. I'm going to take a nap because I'm going to have a lot to do later on.
Yeah. Or you would say, oh, so I'm going to eventually be the CEO of such and such. Oh, well, let's fast track that right now. I should probably get that job, in 6 months, God. And God's going to say, no, here's what you don't know. And this is what I see in Joseph. This is what I've experienced, is what God knows is, listen, you don't currently have the character to handle the weight of the calling that I'm placing on you. So, like most human beings, you barely learn anything when things are going really well because you don't really enjoy humility. You don't really embrace dependency. You like to be independent. You like to be your own God. So what I'm going to compassionately do is walk you through a journey, right, with some detours, some dead ends, to give you opportunities to step into defining moments where your character can begin to gain the strength it needs to handle the weight of the calling that I actually have for you. Because you look at Joseph, the time that he's in prison for being, falsely accused of sexual assault for years. You don't think he was thinking, okay, it wasn't bad enough. I had this dream from God and I get betrayed by my brothers, sold into slavery in a different country. All right, well, okay, but it went kind of cool there for a while. I was running Potiphar's house. Then what the heck? Like, now I'm a convicted, criminal, and I'm sitting in prison forever. Like, who's going to bow down to me as I'm wasting away, dying in this prison? But what we see in him is these moments that came, and you see, man, somewhere in there, Joseph learned dependency on God. Somewhere in there, Joseph chose forgiveness. Somewhere in there, God was doing something where he didn't allow bitterness to completely destroy his life. Right. And then when he's given the opportunity to step into the dream, it's no longer, I'm amazing, I'm the best, Dad loves me better than everybody else, everybody should bow down. It's, oh, wait a second. There was such a macro-sized plan God had here to save his people, to save all the people in Egypt. And I got to play a really small role in that. And oh my gosh, here's my brothers bowing down to me. Like, it came true. But I'm now able to step into this moment and see this dream resurrected. And it's not about me. Like, I've become the kind of man that can handle that. And I don't think any of us choose that journey off the menu of life. Sure. And it's kind of crazy to say that it is his compassion and grace that gives us the opportunity to slowly mature into that space. But when it's happening, it feels like garbage. I hate it just as much as the next guy.
For sure. Okay. So yes, I think a lot of people were going to be waiting for you to say that, like, dude, this sucks right now. Like, if this was God's plan, this sucks. He gave me a vision. He told me something. If nothing else, I learned from Joseph not to share it with too many people. Because, I don't have to purposely make this any harder than it is. But like in all of this, though, it sucks. Sometimes you're like, God, I know so many people who believe that when God gives you a plan, that the plan will be smooth sailing because God gave it to you. You just assume that God's way is just smooth sailing. Right. And so the second we experience adversity, we begin to think that, like, this must not have been his plan. Maybe I got the wrong plan. Maybe this is somebody else's dream. More importantly, maybe I should return this. I knew this is the devil. I've been listening to the wrong voice.
Yeah.
He got me. And we don't realize that it's in our weakness, in our struggles, others get to experience his strength for his glory. Yeah. And it's a testimony later that's not like, and so I manned up, I tightened up my bootstraps, and I got it done. And you can tell it that way, but God's sitting there like, you don't have that much strength on your best day. Yeah. Like there were moments where I picked you up, where you couldn't go any further, but you gave it everything you had in your strength and you surrendered the rest to me. Yeah. And it's important to know that surrender, that moment when you said, God, I can't do it anymore. God was like, no, I know. I needed to see you step forward. Yeah. I'll take it from here. I'm going, watch me work. Watch me work. Yeah. And it's funny because I always think, and I laugh about this, and I know this is not funny to everybody, but I always think about how many times God is sitting there like, I was waiting on you to tap me in. Yeah. Now, fellas, hold my beer. I know that's going to make some people mad. Like, God would never drink a beer, but that also spins me over later to a conversation I can't wait to have about the ministry that you started called the Pub Theology. Because when I read about that, I was like, okay, wait a minute. And I read more, and it was like a bar ministry. Now, I can see some people have already tuned out now at this point. Like, all right, see, I knew these guys were heathens. I knew it. I knew it, man. I was here until he lost me now on that one. Yeah. But I thought that was so cool because it's not something you hear every day. And I know I just kind of just flipped the script and it's like we were talking about vision, but now it's like, wow, here we are now. But I love how you said that God created you to be a creator, to create things. And sometimes those things don't always look like what people expect only God to create, because God only creates pastors. That's it. And if you don't have a pulpit, then God didn't create you, and that's not from him. Right. And so I love how you took something, you saw an angle, and I want to hear from you directly on how that even came about, because, but how did you take something that I'm sure you immediately were like, this one's not going to sit well, maybe with some, and create a ministry out of it?
Yeah. Well, it actually does go back to my initial dream, right? Because when we were in our band, we traveled all the country, would play, camps, churches, conferences, and stuff like that. But then we would play bars a lot. We played, some bars on, LA Sunset Strip, played the Whiskey A Go-Go, where, all the, big 80s bands got their starts, and we would play these bars. We played this one bar, it was crazy, in Detroit. It was called the Old Miami. And Robert, I've never been more scared in my life, right? Here's the story. We go to dinner at this place a couple miles away, and this is before GPS, right? So we're literally asking the concierge or whatever, or the host at the place. We're like, hey, we got to go to 1702 North whatever street. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, you're close. He's like, you're going to go out here, you're going to go down, you're going to take a left, you're going to take that down to the road T's. And he's like, when you get to the T, he's like, you're going to turn right. He's like, whatever you do, don't turn left. And we're like, okay. So we get in the van, we drive down, we get to the T in the road. We're looking at the sign, the street sign, and it's like, 1800 this way, like 1700s that way. And we're like, I think we have to turn left, right? And we do. So we turn left, go down about a mile, and we come to this hole in the wall, dirty looking bar in like a shady part of Detroit. And it has this cage on the side of the bar. And we get out, we walk in, we're like, hey, we're the band tonight. They're like, yeah, we'll open the cage, park your van in there. We're like, why are we parking our van and trailer in the cage? Guy's like, you want to be here when you get done tonight? We're like, yeah. So they literally locked our van and trailer in this cage, right? And we go in this bar, and it's weird. Like, we're setting up to play, and like, it's shady. And there's all these dudes walking in like suits. And they'd walk in for like a minute or two, talk to the bartender, say what's up to somebody, and walk out. And like we kept seeing it. We're like, this is weird. Like, why do these suits keep coming in here and leaving? And as we kept observing, we're like, oh, they're buying drugs. Like, we're in a shady drug bar in the, somewhere in Detroit with our van locked in the side of the place. And we play our set that night, sing our songs, and, have faith in them, talk about Jesus in them. And we get done with the night, and the band that opened before us and the sound tech from the bar, like we were tearing down talking, and they were like, hey, were you guys like singing about Jesus and stuff? And we're like, yeah, actually, we were. And we ended up having this beautiful conversation with these people in this bar who were in a environment that was completely insulated from the gospel. When we're loading out that night, there are people shooting up all, on the outside behind the bar in the alley in this field that was there. And, and we would play these bars that whole time on that tour, Robert. And this would happen time and time again. We played at the Whiskey. We get down at the Whiskey, and the sound man comes up and he's like, you guys sing about Jesus, aren't you? We're like, yeah. And all of a sudden we get to hear this man's story, and we get a chance to share the love of Jesus with him. And so these seeds were planted in my experience. Then I go become a local church pastor for about 8 years. And I got to what I call a missional freakout moment, where I was so insulated in the church, I didn't have any influential relationships with anybody that didn't know Jesus. And as an apostolic evangelist, like my soul was dying, because I was like, I don't want to be a local church pastor. I want to tell people outside the walls of the church the gospel. And so praying about it, thinking about it, and I was freaking out, man, and thinking about quitting ministry. And so I do what anybody does, when you're freaking out. I went on a missions trip to Bosnia. Which,
okay. Check. Got it.
Check. Yeah. So if you're freaking out right now, just head to Bosnia. So we went to Bosnia just to go rebuild these classrooms that had been, destroyed in the war. And at night we would go out and just, see the culture of this town. And the weekend we were there, we went out one night. The coffee shops all became bars after work. And then we stayed in one, hung out till about midnight. And then the missionaries that were with us were like, hey, you want to see some more of our local culture? And we're like, hey, we're here. Let's see it, So we went down the street to this bar. It was a dance club, whatever. And we walk in, and I mean, it was the smokiest room I've ever been in my life. I mean, it was like you had to smoke 2 cigarettes at the same time or they kicked you out. Like, I mean, it was so smoky. And we were in there for a minute, and it was like all house music, like, it was like, and I'm like, I don't like house music that much. My eyes are burning. So we went out and sat outside to talk. And I said, man, what's crazy? I was like, this is my first time overseas. And I was like, the same thing happening here in Bosnia. It's the same thing happening in most cities in America. Like, these young adults are packing bars, but they're not in churches. And I was like, man, if we could go back home and figure out some way to like own the room and influence everybody, like we might be able to do something. And that phrase, own the room, kept in my brain. I was like, wait a second. When we had the band and I was chasing my initial dream, we owned the room in LA, Detroit, Kansas City, Arizona, like Phoenix. Like, when you have a couple 1,000-watt sound system and a microphone, like, you own the room. You're not some missionary in the corner trying to, hand out pamphlets.
Right.
And so I was like, dude, let's get a band back together, and let's go in, get a bar to book us. Let's be the band, and let's start finding ways to share, the faith, hope, and love of Jesus. And so we started experimenting with it. We put a band together. We got good enough to play a 3-hour cover set, and we'd play. And at the end of it, I'd get up and give like a 3-minute sermon, if you will, between our last 2 songs. We'd play Knocking on Heaven's Door by Bob Dylan, and then we would play Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. And in between those, the band would kind of vamp, and I'd get up and give just this like 3-minute sermon about faith, about forgiveness, about hope, about love. And then we'd hang out and talk with people. And we did this for a few months, and we started to see, when we started talking about these soul themes that people's souls are tuned to, they would come up and open up. Man, you're talking about forgiveness tonight, man.
Right.
I've never been able to forgive my ex-wife. I've never been able to forgive, my mom, whatever. And so we said, man, what if we made this official? Let's start bringing in some more soul themes. So I thought, man, we need to bring generosity, compassion, and servanthood into the bar. So we would bring in a charity, a local nonprofit that was doing great work in the city. And I said, listen, let's interview them, hear their story, how they're making a difference in our city. And then let's take up an offering in the bar and give 100% of it away to the charity. Because you can be super anti-religious and you can be not a Jesus fan. But if you hear somebody telling a story how they're giving socks to homeless teenagers downtown, like, you got to be a pretty depraved person to not go, man, that moves my heart, right?
Right.
And there's a connection between generosity and grace. And when you begin to get people to get these themes that activate their soul, so they've heard about compassion, they've heard about servanthood, they've engaged in generosity, then we always had a text Q&A where all at the whole event, people could text in any question they had about faith, hope, love, God, relationships, text them in live. And I'd get up on stage and do my best to answer them. And so it was kind of a pastoral counseling moment, if you will. Yeah. And then I'd get up at the end of the night and do the thought of the day or thought of the night. And so we did that for a couple of years. Then we were like, listen, we need some type of discipleship follow-up. So we started one time for a couple of years, we called it Holy Happy Hour. And then for a while, we called it Cocktails and Conversations. And we would invite people. We'd have the event on like a Thursday night, Saturday night, maybe, the pub theology. And then we would meet people. We had a team of people we call them pub shepherds. And their job was just to shepherd and talk to people throughout the night and invite them to come to dinner with us that next Monday. And we would buy their dinner and have a simple Jesus conversation. We'd read a scripture, a story of Jesus, and say, hey, what's this story teach you about God? What's it teach you about people? What's it teach you about yourself? And we started to develop, and here comes back to purpose, right? Relationships. We began developing these relationships. People began coming to Christ, getting baptized, getting connected to local churches. And that's, kind of the story of pub theology. But the thing is, God gave me part of that vision in my first dream that died. And so, that's one of the chapters in the book is called Woven, Not Wasted.
Right.
And, when we're in these death of a dream seasons and we feel like that whole decade was a waste. I'm no longer married. I'm no longer a parent. I'm no longer an accountant. I'm no longer a pastor. That was all a waste. No, that was just a season of weaving, right? God was weaving together what he wanted to bring out of your life that you wouldn't have been able to do had you not had those threads present. So God doesn't waste anything in those experiences. So I look back and I'm like, man, if I wouldn't have stood on that stage and been scared out of my mind in Detroit, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to step on that bar in Indy and preach the gospel.
Yeah.
So
that's
good. Pub theology, man.
So like first of all, you just really excited me because I find myself having that conversation a lot of like, so are we content with the people who are already here? What about the people that are out there? The ones who won't come in here, whether it be because of past church hurt, whether it be because of lack of belief or whatever it may be.
Yep.
How do I reach them? And the thing is that for so long it was like, well, let's stay inside the walls now. Don't step too far out there. And it's like, yeah, but how else do I reach them if I don't come into their world and meet them where they're at, where they're comfortable going?
You go build a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Right. And like, if you have a friendship and they're always like, hey, you can come to my house. You're like, well, you want to come to my house and have dinner? No. No, yeah, you can only come to my house. Right? Like this relationship only works one way. Like I'm not going to become vulnerable and out of place to come to your house. You can only, and that's, I think, what we do to people in the church, right? Like, hey, let's build a relationship. Hey, you want to come hang out with me? We go to this bar and listen to music. No. We're having an outreach at our church. You can come there.
Right.
I thought you wanted to have a friendship. No. I just wanted you to go to church so I could feel like I appeased my Christian guilt that I got somebody to come to church. Right.
Yes, yes.
Like I'm not actually, I'm not actually interested in discipling you like Jesus told me to. I'm just going to try to invite you to our friend invite day so you can go to church, and then I'm off the hook. Right.
Right. I've made my metric. I hit my number. My quota has been made now. Yeah.
Because that's spot on with what Jesus said. Stay in the church and just invite people to go there and then not really disciple them. It's just.
Where's my shots fired?
Sorry.
No, that was good. Somebody needed to say it. Because it is so important. It is so important. Like whether it's in humor or seriousness, it's important to say because sometimes to a lot of people, they believe that's how it's supposed to look, and it's only safe here. Like even when I was thinking about how I love for him to share this story about pup theology. It allows people to say, okay, so it's safe to go there, and it's like no. Not only is it safe, it's what God wants you to do.
Yeah.
And not because that he's wanting you just to engulf yourself into a place that you don't feel comfortable, but more so he wants you to meet people where they're at. And that's where relationship is built. And that was what you hit on earlier.
Yeah.
It's all about relationship. Everything is about relationship. This podcast is about community and relationship.
Yeah.
It's bridging brothers to allow them to hear other men's stories, to realize, sheesh, me and that guy are just alike. I need to follow him. I need to reach out to him. I need to share my story because I thought that I was by myself in this. I thought that because of what I was going through, I wasn't worthy to come back into a building like that. And so it bridges that gap sometimes for men who feel lost and don't feel worthy and don't feel enough. And we hit on all of that because I realize how important it is to meet people where they're at. And it starts in relationship. It starts in conversations. It starts in an understanding. I'm going to steal something from somebody who recently said it. And this is probably my second time saying this on an episode, but it always comes back to this. People always want to know what you stand on and where you stand with things. And I think it's more important to not stand on things, but to walk with people through whatever it may be that they're going through, whatever that may look like, as long as it doesn't corrupt your values and what you believe in. It's a matter of sometimes saying, I've got to come all the way up to this line to meet you where I can speak love, I can speak light, I can pull you out of the darkness that you're in just for a little bit, long enough just for you to experience something that you're like, I actually don't want to walk back across that line. I'm actually going to hang out over here with you. It feels a lot warmer. It feels a lot like something I remember a long time ago, but I'm so far away from it and I'm so buried up underneath all these dead dreams that I don't remember what it's like to feel this warm embrace, this love, this feel seen.
Yeah, that's what Jesus did, right? We say he left his glory to come walk amongst us. Like, is there anything more scandalous than God himself walked here on earth and dined with prostitutes and notorious sinners, invited a tax collector to be his disciple, right? Like all these things he did, and then somehow we've sanitized that and made it safe. And I think so many Christians are so worried about committing a sin of commission that they skip the fact that they're committing a massive sin of omission by not actually doing the Great Commission.
Sheesh.
Like,
okay,
well,
just let that hold on, let that one just soak in real quick. 1 second before you pour more water. Hold on, because ooh, okay. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
People would say stuff to us all the time about pub. Like, what people go in there and get drunk, you know? And I'm like, well, I think the people are going to go in there and get drunk regardless if we're there or not. I'd rather be there and talk to them about Jesus in the midst of it, you know? And it's like, you know, and we didn't go about this, and we don't now with, you know, a chip on our shoulder negative deal, but it just, after 13 years of doing it, it's like this week, here's a real deal. I was supposed to be speaking Thursday at a large Christian organization, taking 130 kids or seniors in high school through the spiritual DNA course I have, which helps people discover God's call on their life. And the organization literally called a week ago, like called on Thursday. We're supposed to start on this Thursday, and said, "Hey, we're too afraid of the pushback we could get from some of our people because you do pub theology. You can't come speak to these students." And I'm like, wait a second. We've been doing this for 13 years. We've proven that this works to lead people to Jesus. Like, and you're a Christian organization trying to raise up kids that follow the way of Jesus. Like, wouldn't you just say, "Hey, we want to help you discover God's call in your life because he may call you and equip you to do dangerous things for the kingdom. He may raise you up to be a missionary. And we're dedicated to creating Christian leaders that lead like Jesus."
Sure.
Like, but even now it's like, oh, we couldn't risk, 18-year-olds
to even
knowing.
add to that, one day those students may be in a position where they feel like they're no longer worthy or no longer called by God. So they find themselves in a space where somebody will come in and meet them and find them in there. And they need to know what that looks like and how that may feel one day, to know that no matter how far you run from him, which is honestly my story of like how, I was in private school. I was engulfed in what God wanted to do for my life. But there came a point where I didn't feel like what God could do for my life was good enough for me. And it took him coming to find me in those bars. It took him coming to find me when I was out here chasing other women. And if it hadn't been for that, if it hadn't been for me knowing that my Father will let me come back, maybe he'll let me be a servant. Maybe he'll allow me just to like get a little bit of mercy. Maybe he'll grace me with just a little bit of something. If I hadn't experienced that, to know that he loved me the whole time, no matter how far I ran, no matter what it looked like, no matter how dirty it was, I would have never seen a love that was unlike any love I've ever in my life found, imagined, or seen.
So good.
And so that's why it's so important to sometimes, not even sometimes, to show everybody not only what's in front of the curtain, but what's behind the curtain, what it looks like, no matter who, and realize that God's just not calling you to the people who are already saved, who already know who he is, but he's calling you to the people who look like, oh man, they wasted their life. There's no, God doesn't want them. They made their choice. It's like, this is what cool evangelism looks like. This is not what that evangelist, that guy who went into Bosnia and, ate locusts and wore sheepskin. I'm the new refined John the Baptist, and I'm out here, I'm out here in bars, meeting people where they are and showing them that God wants to shine a light into what you're trying to just drink away.
Yeah.
And I love that, brother. I love, man, I'm not gonna lie, you got me like, I'm sitting here like, man, listen, I'm coming to see what that's like. Like, no, seriously, well, I've never experienced it like that in a setting, and man, that's good.
Well, the thing was, for me, Rob, I felt so out of place. I grew up as a pastor's kid in a denomination that didn't allow drinking. I'd never drank in my life. I'd never gone to bars. I didn't go to bars in college. So I'm in this environment being like, I don't know this. Like, I'm so out of place. I feel like people are going to know I'm for sure a fraud because I don't like, it was so like challenging and awkward. And here's what it did for me. And I thought that I was really committed to the mission of Christ, right? We're going to do this because we're committed to the mission. Well, when I got to where the people were that were insulated from the gospel, what I realized is, oh, Jesus is already here, right? He said the harvest is plentiful, right?
Ooh,
the workers are
come
few.
on now. Yeah.
So pray to the Lord of the harvest to send workers into these fields. And so getting there into these bars where I felt out of place, and then all of a sudden we're having an authentic, vulnerable conversation and realize, oh, God's Jesus has been here working in your life.
Yeah.
But you didn't have anybody that knew Jesus to actually help answer these questions, to help you
For
process
sure.
this pain. And so it just gave me such a, you know, I don't know, it taught me so many things to realize, like, the places we think that we're afraid to go, like, Jesus is there waiting for us to step
Yeah.
into it, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So good.
it's
Man.
I didn't mean for us to have a whole, discipleship necessarily conversation about outreach, whatever, but
Yeah, no,
hopefully this encourages somebody,
yeah, yeah, it was good. It was good because I know, and I talk to a lot of people. I have conversations with a lot of men who feel like, man, listen, nobody ever came to get me. Nobody ever came to see me. I'm in prisons at least every other Monday, if not every Monday, talking to men who feel like God don't want me anymore. And I realized that he's sending us into these wheat fields to do what
Yes.
he's called us to do. And that's every last one of us, no matter who's listening right now. Like you said,
Yeah.
God has a purpose for every last one of us. And sometimes it may be at your dentist office. He's sending you into a wheat field at that dentist office because there is somebody that he has been pursuing and he needs to put his hand on them. And that's through you.
Mm-hmm.
He's sending you into your factory or into your warehouse job tomorrow. And he's got a plan and a calling on your life to reach that guy who just feels like he's too far from him. And so no matter how that looks, I hope that this encourages that man who feels like, man, like, I just use a forklift, man. I just pick up stuff off a thing. And it's like, yeah, but dude, you don't even realize that you're in a wheat field every day you go in there. And God's calling you to not only work according to the excellent level of what he's calling you to do, but also to reach those who are like standing right next to you every day, who you don't realize is going through the roughest time right now. And he just needs you to simply ask, like truly be like, hey, brother, hey, sister, how you doing? Like today? Like, no, for real. I got a little bit of time. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
And allow a person, even if it's just for one time, to feel seen, to feel like somebody really wants to know, like, oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. No, this ain't a brush off question. Like, no, I feel like, man, we've never spoken before, but I feel like, today, maybe today was the day for me to build a new relationship with you. Meet you where you at. Where you eating lunch at today?
Yeah.
Oh, you eat lunch out back on the field? I'll come and eat with you. But I hope this, if nothing else, this inspired somebody to realize that their dream is far from done. Their dream is far from dead. Their dream and what God has called for them and what he wants to do through them is just like, it's just beginning. It's going to begin tomorrow for you, maybe. Maybe tomorrow is a day for you to go and step out of your uncomfortable space of like, yeah, but I don't really like talking to those guys at work. Yeah, but like, maybe God's calling you. Maybe he's been calling you to talk to that one guy over there that nobody ever talks to. Or maybe he's calling you to sit in that men's circle right over there and see what's going on. And maybe you're the one that's being called out, and those men are waiting for you to come into it. You just never know how it plays. But man, this was good.
Absolutely.
This was good. Daron, I appreciate you joining me tonight, man. I might have to make a nightcap podcast where I just like, hey man, these stories tuck me in. They get me like, hey, look, this was good tonight. I appreciate you joining me. Look, Matt told me, he was like, man, y'all gonna have a good conversation. I was like, you don't know that. And just to bridge that, like my good friend Matt was like, man, I really want you to talk to this guy. Like and so as I'm like, oh yeah, no, I wouldn't, after reading the book, I was like, yeah, it'd be fun. But like, it's almost like he had already had a dream and a vision that he knew was like, man, it's going to be rich. All right. Okay, Matt. Like you say that about everyone, but no, this was a blessing, man. This was truly a blessing. I appreciate you sitting with me, hanging out with me tonight and just sharing your story, sharing some encouragement, just just doing what you do. And I want to give you an opportunity to share, just your whether it be your website and different things, of how people can reach out to you to hear
Sure.
more about what you're doing. Maybe even drop in on the next pub theology, and just because they're like, I gotta see this to believe it.
Yeah.
So please, I'll let you share your information with my audience.
Yeah, you can just hit me up. My website's just DaronEarlewine.com. Same, just my name out in socials as well: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The book, you can get it on Amazon or anywhere you get online books. It's also on Audible. We just released the Audible version of it. So if you don't like to read, you like to listen to books, I'm reading it. So it's me reading it, and it's out. And we just dropped actually next week, we're dropping a small group curriculum with the book. If you have maybe a men's group that you have experienced a death of a dream, you can get together and go through that. And then if you're really trying to discover God's purpose in your life, I have an online course that I've created called Spiritual DNA that helps you answer life's 4 critical questions to understand how God's created you and how you step into that. It's an online course. You can go through it by yourself, or you can also get coaching and go through that. But it's there's a link for it on my website, or you can go to spiritualdna.me is the website for that. But that's
I'll have all that information in the comments and all that stuff like that. But that right there is a great for all the men who have a fire pit group, who want to start a fire pit group, and you don't know what to say, you don't know how to start it. These type of like catalogs and curriculums are great for those, great for those moments where it's like, okay, well, I don't know how to break the ice, I don't know how to get started. Well, There you go. These are the perfect situations for you to just segue those conversations just around a fire pit, or around your kitchen table or your living room, with just building relationship with men or ladies. I'm sure it's for everybody, but like I said, I appreciate you coming and sharing all this with us today, man. This is a great conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'd love to come back sometime.
No, we're gonna definitely have to do it again. I'm gonna have to put something together where we can tackle a topic or something. I don't know, man. This was good. I have fun covering things. You didn't hold back, and I like that. I like that. Well, hey, listen, everybody, I appreciate you guys joining us today. Hey, man, I enjoyed it if you did, as I always say, and I'm so excited for what you're going to get or you got out of this episode. Feel free to leave any comments. Feel free to reach out to Daron. He's definitely reachable. I was able to get in touch with him, so know that he's not like one of those people who are like ignore, and like like I said, he's got a great book. You want to read this book. This book is good. If nothing else, it's a great read. Even if you're like, I got nothing from it, it's a great read. I enjoyed it. I had a great time reading this. So, hey, you guys be blessed. Thank you again for joining us.
We appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you'll like and subscribe and also listen to past episodes. We hope to bring you great future content as well. Please comment your thoughts on this episode, as well as leave any prayer requests below so that this community can pray alongside you. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Israel Stories.
Brothers, we understand how the thoughts of even facing your own past and current story and the pain and hurt that come along with this is no easy task. But you're not alone, as you hear in these episodes. Nor has God forgotten you or left your side, as He's in it with you, fighting alongside you through the storms of life. He loves and has already forgiven you, no matter what you have done, and He wants a relationship with you. Your healing, freedom, and growth are important to God, and to us as well. Maybe you're considering giving up, or need someone to talk to. Here are a few resources that already exist that we hope can shine a light into that dark place you're in. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line with individuals who would love to talk with you. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential, and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle in life. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.